This profound prelude and fugue in B minor alludes and concludes through its motives and subjects to a cantata that Bach composed for the death of a queen. He called the cantata a tombeau, a grave monument. Bach likely repurposed the tombeau music for the funeral of a prince, Leopold of Anhalt-Köthen. It may even have served as a model for his St. Mark Passion, commemorating Christ's suffering. The scores of these works are lost, but the preserved texts fit the music for the Queen perfectly. On the cover of the Prelude and Fugue, the score is intimately linked to Bach's own legacy. Anna Magdalena inscribed the name of their youngest son, Crystal, marking it as his personal inheritance. We hear a descending melody from B in the soprano to B in the bass in the opening measures. It traces a world of meaning, of lives lost and hope found, carried by the Baroque effects. Beyond its sound, the score itself is of a ravishing beauty. Meticulously crafted, it harnesses the majesty of the Queen of Instruments, the full organ. This video is a personal, roaming exploration, wandering beyond strict borders, guided by observations and calligraphy practice. The drama of the tombeau is captured in a metaphor, a sun ray, a last sign of life from the deceased queen. Here the music ascends. This upward motion breaks the gravitational pull of the opening of the prelude, reaching through the darkness of B minor towards a celestial home and hope. The Queen's beam is a beacon amidst mourning. Sorrow is expressed in a contrasting motif, repeated descending seconds, like short musical sobs. After Bach's death, his wife and children divided the scores among the sons. The youngest son, Christian, presumably received a substantial portion of the organ scores. When he moved in with his brother Emanuel in Berlin as a boy, he regularly lent out scores to be copied. Christian's calling name was Crystal, as the cover confirms. This tender detail brings the daily life of the Bach family closer. Font is difficult to read if you are unfamiliar with it. The capital C reads as a capital E to the untrained eye. Autographs of organ works by Bach are rare. We mostly rely on copies. The practice of lending caused significant loss. Autographs were frequently never returned. Simultaneously, duplicates ensured the survival of the music. The magnificent, enchanting calligraphy of this work makes us realize what has been lost. The complex fabric of organ music forced Bach to astonishing calligraphic heights, creating his most beautiful script. The music's sense of loss mirrors a real one. The elegance of the unique, exquisite scores could not prevent many organ autographs from vanishing. The score of the prelude, the Queen of Scores, can serve as a prime reference for reconstructing the notation of surviving, copied organ works. The white light of the organo pleno is broken into a complex six-part texture. The grand staff acts like a prism. It drapes the independent voices over 2 hands and 2 feet, and converges them into a single visual image. By studying Bach's hand, we restore a lost visual voice. His grouping of notes is a silent conductor. it guides phrasing and personal touch. The off-grid liveliness inspires spontaneity and breadth. The individuality of every sign creates a visual hook, a sense of place, the here and now. Modern engraved lines often silence this information, silencing the silent conductor. Where the MBA edition stretches Prelude and Fugue over 14 pages, Bach's score spans only 9. In his layout, the architecture remains visible at a glance. This is the quality standard of his legacy, a meta-level of musical thought, a superior form of information transfer, captured in ink. The city of Leipzig was a cradle of the early Enlightenment. We can see the free spirit of the queen who refused to sacrifice her fate for a crown in this light. In the tombeau opening chorus, we hear her ray ascending and descending. The upward movement seems a spatial contradiction, as her light emanates from a heavenly Jerusalem, from above, downwards to us earthlings. But the uplifting emotional value prevails as comforting movement. An empirical question: how can someone who has died send a ray of light? Isn't that asking too much, speaking enlightened? We find the answer on the first page of the tombeau. On the bottom lines, sketch notes appear. Bach had to wait for the ink on the bold beams to dry before he could turn the page, and in those moments we can read his thoughts. In tiny, quickly drying scribbling, the ray is noted downwards from a divine D ending in a mournful B. In the third recitative of the tombeau, the word dead appears, sung on a B flat, the only note in the entire piece with this accidental, a solitary shadow in a landscape of tawny sharps. Contemplating the score, Bach's thoughts turn to the final 10th movement, and he scribbles a melody that comes to mind. The lyrics for this conclusion sing, "You do not die." The music suggests that the queen is still alive, an embodiment of the triumph of spirit over matter. What goes up must come down. In the opening chorus of the tombeau, Bach paints words with music. Queen, send forth one more time a ray from the stellar fold. The second time this sentence is sung, the music ignites upward on the word ray as a musical question, a musical plea reaching for the heavens. In the next repetition, the melodic beam of light descends. In this celestial conversation between heaven and earth, the prayer is answered, the queen is present. There is symmetry between prelude and tombeau in descending and ascending motion. The canopy of the Paulinerkirche was a complex stellar net vault, a celestial ceiling. There's architectural unity, literal and figurative, an organic whole, a structural bond. The metaphor of the sunbeam is steeped in the splendor and pomp imagery borrowed from the French Sun King, Louis XIV. At the age of 14, Louis danced the lead role as the rising sun in a royal ballet. The footsteps of his stylized entrance became an institutionalized musical motif, the dotted rhythm. In a magnificent costume as the sun god Apollo, he symbolically defeated darkness. Louis' court style set the standard for majesty. Language of Versailles dictated an awe-inspiring sound for the queen of instruments, the full organ. The solar symbolism elevates the deceased queen to a near-divine status. Bach lived under Louis XIV's influence, wearing the formal wig in imitation of the era's grand style. The number 14 resonates constantly in his art as the personification of his own name and essence. The name Bach can be converted in the German note names B-flat, A, C and H, the letter H being the name of the note B. In bar 14 of the Prelude, the alto begins a variant of the opening's motif. Transposed by a tritone, it spells out the letters of the name Bach. It sounds in disguise, a hidden pulse, yet present, floating on dotted royal pedal steps. This is a courtly ballroom. We hear the ceremonial heavy earthly power of a king, the rhythm of the tippity-tap footsteps of a radiant ruler in the bass. Above it, the composer's signature personally dances along, filling the space with his own identity. The motif sounds again in bar 15. The further name melody in the tenor underpins the two coded names. The Trinity of the constellations symbolizes that Christ is present during the composition process, at the B of the Big Bach Bang. Scientifically speaking, such an interpretation is hypothetical, but substantively it's more than plausible. You have to take a leap of faith to connect. But in doing so, the gates of possible conjectures open widely. For example, we can also view the measured transition from 14 to 15 in the light of the symbolic transfer of the score to the 15-year-old Crystal after the passing of his father. An unintentional coincidence that nevertheless aligns with what actually happened. The Queen's beam of light paces proudly forward with the pointed precision and punctuated procession of a French overture. But when Bach's music was printed in the 19th century, Queen Christiana's footsteps had faded. Editor Wilhelm Roest stripped away her personality, replacing Queen with highest, a deification that silenced the woman, a chilling wind quieting her voice. For a long time, this depersonalized tombeau became the freezing lens through which the world saw her. When formal church funerals proved impossible, the royal house being strictly Catholic, the wealthy Leipzig student Hans Karl von Kirchbach took matters into his own hands. He secured personal royal permission for a memorial. He swayed the university authorities to host a grand academic ceremony in the Paulinerkirche on Friday, October the 17th, 1727. Tribute funded entirely from his own pocket. There was a dispute about who was entitled to compose the music for the occasion. The university organist Johann Gottlieb Görner claimed the exclusive right. During a hearing on October the 9th, Commissioner von Kirchbach declares that Bach, having already worked on the piece for 8 days, threatens to thwart the entire project. Eventually, Görner received 12 thalers in compensation. Bach was asked to sign a statement promising this would set no precedent. Steadfastly he refused, a defiance that characterizes his personality. Bach inscribed the final notes and the date on the last page on October the 15th, concluding a total composition period of 3 weeks. The legal dispute turned it into a period of unrest. The score of the tombeau is hastily written throughout. The 21 days of writing time cannot be deduced from it. It stands in stark contrast to the splendid, neat calligraphic layout of the Prelude and Fugue. How fast did he write? A way to determine this experimentally is to calligraph a page after some practice with his writing style. According to Robert L. Marshall, Bach needed approximately 15 to 30 minutes per page to produce a neat musical manuscript. The sheer diversity of compositions make reducing the number to a single figure a precarious and less insightful undertaking. A texture like this prelude shatters that average. This page took me about 3/4 of an hour, surrendering myself reluctantly to a competitive element for the sake of science. Not to pretend Bach's mastery, but this approximation can give a sense of his vibe, his possible pace. Beyond speed, his script is a superior form of musical notation. Though deeply personal, its clarity and flow deserve to be the common standard. Anna Magdalena's hand proves that it is reproducible. The craft is the magic. Notably, the signature in the tombeau score corresponds to that of the prelude. There is a sea of variation in Bach's handwriting, often methodologically uneven. His signature is an anchor, a timestamp in ink. Research dates the prelude to the period between 1727 and 1733. Given the striking similarities of the name, the year 1727, shortly after the ceremony, is an option that makes sense. The genesis of the later musical offering could be a twin origin story, improvised on the spot over a royal theme, and afterwards perfected and developed in peace and quiet. The serenity and powerful handwriting seems a physical expression of pride. It may have been fueled by looking back on a successful artistic achievement. Satisfied Bach, working in the aftermath of the Queen's memorial. With the same notes, Bach colors 3 stages of human suffering and hope in the universal language of music, a trilogy of sorrow. In the tombeau, the opening verse, "Let, Queen, let another ray shine through," act as a hopeful plea. The music serves as a window to eternity. For the funeral of Prince Leopold, the tone shifts to raw collective grief. Lament, children, lament it to the world. Command for the children of Köthen to let their tears flow freely. Darkest of all are the words of the lost Saint Mark Passion. Go, Jesus, go to your torment. It expresses the ultimate acceptance of suffering. The entrance dancing, light-footed steps of the Sun King are transformed, painting the faltering, heavy final steps of Christ towards his sacrifice. Divine presence flows in the very first strokes of the Queen's tombeau, a signature of fate. These double capitals, JJ, are the silent prayer, Jesu Juva, Jesus help. A humble plea for assistance in the act of creation. For Bach, from the very first bar, the Son of God was present from the beginning. We recognize the letter T by its cross. But look at the word tode, dead in the autograph, the B-flat memento mori, the trauertode of the Trauerode. Two stacked semicircles appear. The base of the capital E. How to understand? This choice is rooted in printed letter forms and space-saving efficiency. For text between staves, Bach uses the German current, 2 pen nibs high, in contrast to the Italian font of his titles, measuring 5 nibs. The written T, resembling an E, is a simplified, rounded version of an angular fracture capital, combining tradition and speed. Crystal's capital C in Anna Magdalena's hand shares a printed fracture base. The result is a shape that aligns with the simplified form for the T, equalizing C and T to the shape of E for our modern eyes. The mother who writes her son's name for his inheritance, the father who records the intrepidity of a queen in the face of her death. There is a formal correspondence in the capital letters, foresightful circling, gravitating and converging toward the passion. A preluding picture of the metamorphosis of the music, from sun to sun, bound by death, the score ultimately saved by Crystal's bequest. Such interpreted detail exists only in the eye of the beholder, a subjective perspective disconnected from real artistic intentions. Yet rich art is a fertile breeding ground, transforming spectators into active participants in the act of creation. The ABC of calligraphy deepens the spirit of the scores. Letter forms take on each other's shape. Suggestive cross-references rise to different meanings. The etc. of E, T and C weave such a common thread through the ink, a wink to eternity. Such reflections on typeface and content go beyond the borders of enlightened science. But the used method can be a tool for disentangling a modern muddy issue in musicology. It takes place in the aria from the second part of the Trauerode of the latest Neue Bach-Ausgabe edition. We travel from capital E to minuscule E. The main motif in the continuo part is the lamento forte, descending from E to B. Against this downward pull, a superlative is used. The queen radiates with the force of not one, but with 100 suns. In the printed 18th century eulogy, we can read that this radiation wipes away the image of the earth, der Erden Denkbeeld. Scientific deciphering of Bach's score has changed a letter E to R. The word denkbeeld becomes dragbeeld, a dirty picture. A classic confusion in the whimsical current script between the E and R for untrained eyes. A division from the cosmic to the comic, a solar sin and a stain in the universe, betrays a lack of affinity for content and form and the ever-transforming shapes of letters. The knowledge gap turned luminosity into a will-o'-the-wisp. Misreading the E in Bach's hasty shorthand muddied the Queen's gleaming light. Christiana's husband, King August, fathered a staggering number of children, rumored to be hundreds, but only one with the Queen, August III, heir to their royal title. King August had the nickname the Strong. He once broke a horseshoe with his bare hands. When the king died in 1733, Bach composed the first version of the Mass in B minor for the occasion. He sent the score along with a plea for an honorary court title, wishing to gain prestige. Christiana's only son, August III, granted Bach the title of Royal Court Composer in 1736. At the end of his life, Bach compiled his great mass from a series of highlights from his sacred music. The text was in Latin, the lingua franca of the time, with which Bach likely sought to safeguard his artistic legacy against the ravages of changing taste and contemporary spirit. He chose a language that would become a frozen, near-dead monument, while Luther's vibrant German vernacular endured. But his legacy was not lost due to that barrier. It has lived on its own merits thanks to its universal musical language. The first beat of Measure 16 marks the transition to a new episode, and the score itself underwent a new, terrifying adventure. This ascending melody is suddenly giving a graphic illustration of its illuminating theme. We may imagine Bach in a moment of contemplation, waiting for ink to dry, sharpening his quill, filling and lighting his pipe. A burning crumb falls onto the paper. A minuscule meteor shot through the space of his composition studio. An unforeseen luminous arc, a tiny twinkling star. Upon impact, it gnaws a hole with charred edges. It worked its way through several folia, a cross section. The scent of charred paper drifted through his studio. His own internal pipes sounded alarm. In the successive burns, it appears fireman Bach extinguished the smoldering peat with a quick stroke of his quill, an improvised firefighting operation, with wet ink serving as a life-saving tool. The tombeau's plea for a sign of life from the Queen was answered in his domestic studio setting, quite literally lighting and lightening the score. Bach had a good reason to retrim his molten quill nib. The flaming fire of his writing style had touched its burning royal equal. Representation and reality coincide. The prelude is followed by a fugue. The skeleton of its theme is formed by the basic triad, like so many of his subjects. It's remarkable how Bach succeeds in sculpting a hyper-individual, vivid theme from that simple premise every single time. After a few runs, it concludes with an octave leap, a beam from B to B, the ultimate summary of the preceding music, completing the circle that started in the octave tippity tap pedal leap of the prelude, traced by left and right foot. Queen Christiane, light of them lives, fire of his souls. The tip of his toes taking a trip of ticking steps down the pedal board to tap on B with his feet. This is a physical pressure, a tectonic shift that vibrates through the stone of the Pauliner Kirche and the very timber of the organ loft. In this final subject, the Queen's race defies Earth's grave gravity. Bach has the oboe quote an early cantata of his during the metaphor of the 100 suns that sweeps away the soiled image of early thought. That work, composed a year before, bore the title I Want to Bear the Cross. In the opening aria, he notably writes the words cross as a simple X, a graphic shorthand for the instrument of Christ's suffering. The harmony sounds tormented, laced with the tritone, harsh, abrasive, dissonant intervals. In a handbook for composers by Joseph Fuchs, which was highly appreciated by Bach, the tritone was called the Diabolus in Musica, or the Devil in Music. Halfway through this aria, the bass voice sings the lyrics, "He will lead me after my troubles to God, to the promised land." Bach cites this very melody, weaving it into the fabric of the Trauerode aria. The radiance of 100 suns is thus inextricably linked to the weight of the cross. The calligraphed X is key to the promised land. King August was warlike. To establish his rule in conquered lands, he changed his faith from Lutheran to Catholic. Throughout her life, enormous pressure was exerted on Christiana to do the same, but she steadfastly refused and thereby became a symbol. Her nickname was Pillar of Faith, the upright architecture of her angular ray. August found Christiana boring. She was hurt by his continuous infidelity and used to live in exile and isolation. It was an overcrowded exile and a densely populated solitude. 100 sons lived without her husband and their only son, but was surrounded by many servants and courtiers. August's numerous offspring cast a shadow of darkness, a drag belt caused by his erected virile pillar of infidelity. It lays a crossing veil over Christiana's 100 sons in the solitude of her castle. The crown was her cross, but her fate, her denkbeeld, led to her salvation. Neither her husband nor her son attended her funeral. The fate of orphans was close to her heart. Without her own child, she fulfilled the role of mother of the land. Among the young relatives she raised at her court were two future queens. While he puffed his burning tobacco-filled pipe, the organ inhaled the autumn chill of the church. As the temperature dropped, the air inside the contracted organ pipes grew denser, slowing the vibrations and pulling the pitch downward. Commissioner Karl Kirchbach had asked the early Enlightenment philosopher and poet Christoph Gottsched to write the text. His ode has a strict strophic structure, unsuitable for drama. Bach decided to convert the text into a libretto, chopped it in parts, and changed some of the words. Where Gottsched has the people standing erstaunt, bewildered around the grave, Bach leaves them erstarrt, frozen. That editorial intervention changed a passive observation into a physical state, a sensory reality. Director Bach turned the event into a personal experience. The chill of death was felt in the church. The haste of the handwriting seems to contradict the 3-week composition period. The final recitative is a frozen moment of transformation that does not seem entirely complete. The original stanza form has been preserved in the 16 lines. Bach likely envisioned an aria for them, but the clock outran his quill. No chance to chill out and let it go. The act of creation was frozen midway. Soprano voices were typically sung by boys. Women were strictly forbidden from singing in church. Anna Magdalena possessed a renowned soprano voice and had been a highly paid singer under Prince Leopold in Köthen. For the funeral ceremony of the prince, Sebastian compiled the music from parts of the St. Matthew Passion and the Trauerode. While church music was generally unwelcome at a Calvinist court, funeral memorials were the exception, and even a woman's voice was permitted to break the silence. It is more than likely that Anna Magdalena herself sang the soprano parts on that occasion. She was no longer just a mother or a copyist. Anna was a star, the embodied breath of Sebastian's grief. Music revealed Lutheran truths. A major chord was a manifestation of the Holy Trinity. The B minor chord differs from it with its lowered somber third, the treble position of man. The overtones of the notes have a major third. The full organ colors the sound emphatically. When sounded together, the minor and major third are empirically impure. Their waves interfere even more turbulently than those of a tritone. But intuitively we perceive them as timbre, our senses bringing them harmonically together. The ambiguity of contradictions manifests itself on many levels in Bach's art. Yet there is an overarching sense of unity. Bach personally inspected the organ in the Paulinerkirche in 1717 and was very pleased with its skillful construction. Johann Scheibe's organ contained registers that amplified overtones, making the natural major third, the heart of the Trinity, clearly audible within the color of the minor chord. While the precise temperament has not been preserved, unequal tuning favored certain keys. In B minor, the timbre of the ratio was radiant and majestic, befitting the music's content. The last chord of the tombeau is a B minor, but the inherent restless color of the minor chords takes an unexpected turn in the last chord that sounded that day. A pickety third blasted in the church. The fugue concludes with a major third in the tonic chord, a sudden cessation of the friction in the key of B minor. Timbre turbulence made way for coinciding frequencies. With that, we have spiritually arrived in the promised land. The Paulinerkirche was blasted in 1968. After the blow, the organ was gone. The autograph is the place where the church and organ still stand. The keyboard of an organ is not touch sensitive. To create emphasis, a different strategy is required. In the 18th century, staccato points carried a slightly different meaning than they do in modern notation. Rather than a fixed short length, they indicated an articulated tone. The actual duration was left to the discretion of the musician. Queen Christiane died on September 5, 1727. Ernst C. Kuhl's book Leipzig in Tears, published in the same year, records the Trauerode ceremony in detail. A prelude was played on the organ at the beginning, and at the end of the service there was an organ nachspiel, a postlude, likely the fugue that follows the prelude. The Trauerode consists of 10 movements. A speech was given in between, dividing the music in two halves. The first part concludes with a quiet fugue. The second ends with the organ fugue, creating a balanced, mirrored symmetry. In the fugue theme and its counterpoint, an inversion of the lamento motif plays a leading role, a four-note upward run, the spiritual ascent of the Queen's soul. It is the resolution of the earlier morning continual melody that carried 100 suns. The prelude hints prematurely at this in bar 10, where a ray of light escapes through a D sharp, a brief spark of major amidst the minor. The prelude, the Trauer Ode and the fugue form a whole. They must be sounded together to complete the emotional arc, closing the circle in major. The introduction of new thematic material in the prelude already anticipates the lamento and ascending forth, not by literal statement but through playful variations, a visual and auditory preparation for the final ascent. The crowded solitude of Christiane contrasts to Anna Magdalena's corroded household, growing quiet and empty after Sebastian passed away. The possessions were divided, and Anna acted. The precious scores were distributed among the sons from both of Bach's marriages. The name of Crystal in Anna Magdalena's handwriting on the cover suggests that she played an active role in the division and allocation of the manuscripts. As his mother and caregiver, she had actual control over the papers that ended up in the child's parts. How could she have come to give the Prelude and Fugue to their youngest son? 15-year-old Crystal moved to Berlin to live with his brother Emanuel. With the stack of organ scores, his mother gave him a fatherly, portable education. For Crystal, the Christian Prelude was a toolbox and talisman. An embodiment of Sebastian's Christus coronabit crucigueros motto. The Savior crowns and protects his faithful followers. In legacy in his father's voice, carried by his mother's care, calligraphed on paper, cherished forever. The autograph is nowadays located in a library in New York City as part of the Robert Owen Lehman collection. It is periodically exhibited under strict museum conditions, shrouded in as little light as possible to protect it from decay. She has a residency in a transparent shrine within her treasury, reigning from a new, modern court. The Queen still lights up in darkness, in the freezing afterglow of Bach's creative outburst. She remains the relic radiation of the cosmic microwave background, the ballroom of the Big Bang in B minor. In the dark matter and energy we found the traces of the Creator himself, the fingerprints of its compounds, drifting under the smoke of his pipe and vibrating in his sounding pipes. Covered in her shroud, the sheets of the Queen shine eternally. The Trauer Ode was composed in a fleeting 21 days. We have navigated 21 stories and reached bar 21. Here her last line will descend from B to E, and while the prelude will continue in an everlasting etc., we witness the moment the Queen releases the 21 grams of her soul. A soul set free, forever to be.